If we could hook that up if we ever go to Kentucky, I'd be really thrilled.
Yeah, have a show during the Derby. Let's do that. They have been given the go-ahead.
Go watch the ponies.
Surprise, surprise, a one drop here from Graves. It is a Fire Drinker Satyr.
So this is going to be where the game is determined, these first two turns. Does Joseph have his lands and his mana on time, and does he have stuff to add to the board? If he passes that test, he can start getting into the mid-game and deploying his powerful cards. But if he fails, he's never going to get that opportunity.
Eckert going to leave a card on top. This is Legion Loyalist, and this is an attack for 3 by Graves. Eckert's already down to 17.
So this is not the most explosive start here. Graves' hand is pretty burn heavy, and that's, in its own way, good news for Joseph, because he's not good at containing the early game creatures.
The Sylvan Caryatid's going to come down. That's going to try to block the road, so we will see if Graves has a card like Rebel Mako or Titan Strength, as it looks like Rebel Mako was the draw for the turn. So here is an attack. There's a block. Could just be a simple pump here. Yep, that's exactly what we're going to see.
That was a poor block.
Not a fan of that block.
No. Block the Loyalist if you're going to do anything there. At least trade with a pump spell. That turn for Graves was ideal. I mean, he was going to use his Maka on any sort of Loyalist pump, so.
There's a Mystic, along with another copy of Sylvan Caryatid, just looking like Eckert wanted to save some damage on that turn. Here's a Mutavault as the draw. That's going to come down. Graves does have a Rabble Master in hand that he can deploy if he'd like.
Well, the Rabble Master is very good this turn because it makes a token, which can attack. That allows Legion Loyalist to trigger, and Elvish Mystic can no longer block anything.
See the hand there? The Maka that we talked about last turn, Lightning Strike, 2 copies of Stoke the Flames, and a Rabble Master. The third land was very timely. We'll see if Graves does want to play the powerful Goblin this turn, as he does shuffle it to the front of his hand. Considering his options, wondering how many cards his friend Joseph Eckert does have in hand. Graves is off to a pretty nice start this game. We'll see if he can keep pushing it forward.
So I guess Graves does have to concern himself with Mizium Mortars. Eckert
Sure.
is missing the third red, but it is something that can conceivably happen next turn, and his hand is very poorly equipped to be in overloaded mortars at this stage. His hand's just burn spells and a Maka, so he may not be able to recover.
Yeah, there are 3 of those in Eckert's deck list, so there's definitely a reason to be scared of that card. I think that's part of the reason you see him being pretty cautious on this turn.
For sure, the problem is with the Rabble Master play, while obvious, means that Joseph does not lose any of his mana creatures in combat. And so Thomas is very much exposed to Mizium Mortars on the way back. So it's possible that Tom is willing to have a slightly inefficient turn to ensure that at least one of the mana creatures leaves play.
Looks like he will go with the Rabble Master here, though, and maybe he's just hoping that there is no mortars this turn. The coast does look to be clear.
It seems unlikely, given that Joseph hasn't cast it thus far. He doesn't have a third red mana, and he would have to have a Mortars and a 6th land, which is red mana that comes into play untapped. It's definitely possible, but it seems less than likely.
Battalion will trigger with this attack. So as you mentioned, Elvish Mystic, not going to be a good blocker here, as all the creatures do have First Strike and Trample. So Caryatid will jump in front of the Fire Drinker Satyr. 2 damage will come across via the Goblins. Eckert will take a little bit of damage, and we'll go back to his turn. Nissa is the draw. This is 3 mana. There's a Courser of Kruphix. Take a look at the top card. There is a Mizium Mortars. This is what Graves was probably pretty scared of.
And now Graves has to be fingers crossed here that there's a missed land drop. He can use Stoke the Flames to take care of this Courser and dodge an overloaded mortars for at least one more turn.
Rakdos Cackler the draw there for Thomas. We'll trigger the Rabble Master. It's time to attack with everybody. Pretty safe attack when you've got the Maka hanging out.
Not only the Maka hanging out, but Legion Loyalist triggering. That takes the Mystic out of combat.
Looks like I think what Graves' plan here is just to try to deal as much damage as he can on this turn. He's got 3 burn spells in his hand.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good spot to be in, I think.
If the Maka, if the Courser gets involved in combat, it's going to die to the Maka. He can do the same thing if the Caryatid gets involved in combat. And at the minimum, that keeps Joseph off of overloading and mortars for at least one more turn, even if there's a land on top in either scenario.
So, Graves, after blocks are declared here, looking to figure out exactly how he wants to use his resources. There's the Maka. Here's a lightning strike. Again, all this with first strike on, he's going to lightning strike that. And then Maka will go onto the Goblin. That'll make it a 4/4, trample over for a point of damage. And I think, you know, the part of the reason we see that is because he wants to cut the red sources.
For sure. He just wants to protect himself as much as possible from Mizian Mortars getting overloaded. Probably isn't going to matter because I do not believe that Joseph is going to get to his next turn.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
But still technically correct play from Tommy.
I like everything that he did on that turn. Get the carry added in the core shot of play. Eckert's draw is clunky at best. He just really can't do a lot, and that Elvish Mystic can't even, you know, get in combat. Legion Loyalist is having a huge effect on this game.
Not a card you typically associate with being that good against Stone Walkers, but the way things have broken here, it's been very important. Yeah. And you can look at Joseph's hand here. He's had his Xenagos in his hand the entire time. Can't really cast that in the face of the Legion Loyalists. Hard to justify using removal on it when you're getting hit by Fire Drink Crusaders and Goblin Rabble Masters and such.
Yeah, it's just a boring old 1/1. But it is causing a lot of trouble. All of the effects of Battalion have had an effect on this game. The first strike, the trample, and the fact that creature tokens can't block, all have had a huge impact.
It's also increasing the size of the Rabble Master.
That too. Mizian Mortars are going to take down the Rabble Master, but Grace is going to quickly untap here. Looks like he knows he's got this one set up. I'm going to attack with all the creatures. He could show Stoke if he wants. Yep, and he exactly will do that. Thomas Graves does win game number 1 here over his good friend Joseph Eckert. Rabble Red is up a game here against Jed Walkers, and as these players go to the sideboards, we're going to bring it back to the booth because it is trivia time. The first of 3 early this morning from St. Louis. Mr. Sullivan has the rules, and I have the question.
So I'm just going to ask you a question. Tweet your answer at SCG Live and hashtag SCG Premium of the correct responses. One will be selected at random for 3 months of Star City Games Premium content. It's about accuracy and not speed, so don't worry about submitting first, just accurately. And please keep in mind that this giveaway is run at the sole discretion of StarCityGames.com, and that Twitch TV is in no way affiliated with giveaways on its streams.
Take a look at Tommy Graves' deck list. He's playing Rabble Red, of course, and within the deck list, he has 1 artifact in his main deck, just 1, and if you can name it, hashtag the answer with the hashtag of SCG Premium on Twitter. Make sure you're following at SCG Live, and we will announce the winner at the conclusion of our quarterfinal round. Pretty easy question this morning as we do head back to the match and take a look at the sideboards. We will start with Mr. Eckert, who is down a game with his Jund Planeswalkers deck. He does have, again, 4 Mistcutter Hydras, 2 Scavenging Ooze, 2 Doomblade, a Golgari Charm, 2 Magma Spray, Mizian Mortars, Rakdos Return, and 2 copies of Thoughtseize. What do you like, Patrick?
He gets to clean up a lot of the issues in the matchup post-board here. He becomes faster and leaner. 2 copies of Scavenging Ooze, 2 Doomblades, a Golgari Charm, 2 copies of Magma Spray, and a Mizian Mortars. Just more cheap removal. Get rid of some of the clunkier elements of the deck and stabilize the game earlier so he can start getting to his Planeswalkers on a more stable board with a higher life total.
On the other side of things for Mr. Graves, 2 Boros Reckoner, the very powerful Dyna charts. We saw him use that to great effect yesterday. 3 Eidolon of the Great Revel, a Harness by Force, 3 Magma Spray, 2 Mizian Mortars, 1 Mutavault, and 2 Skullcracks.
I'm not a huge fan of anything specifically that's going on here. I suppose the 2 copies of Boros Reckoner are reasonable, though Jund Walkers is equipped with a fair number of just straight, you know, Doomblade terror style effects. I can see the extra Mizian Mortars coming in as more answers to Courser Krufix, but I think in general, Tom wants to remain as threat dense as possible, so I could see him sideboarding very little for this matchup. Maybe Eidolon's okay because it's likely to trigger at least once in Joseph's effort to get off the board, though sometimes that's not going to happen at all, and Eidolon is just going to be a hindrance for Tommy. I don't know if Dyna Charge is great post-board because Joseph is bringing in so much removal, it's going to be harder to set up that kind of game state. We'll see. There's a lot of mediocre options here, and if I was in Tommy's seat, I would be interested in possibly just presenting the same 60 or very close to it, but it looks like he's done a fair bit of sideboarding, so we'll see what comes up here.
Yeah, I do have some interest in knowing what's going to change here for Graves. Game 1 was a pretty easy one, and again, I don't expect Game 2 to be too difficult. I mean, obviously, Eckert's going to get some more removal spells, and Scavenging Ooze is going to play out the role in the matchup, but, you know, how much do you want to dilute your deck when Game 1 was so easy?
Right, that's the question. Graves has a lot of C pluses in the sideboard. Cards that are okay, that you can imagine situations where they're productive, but by and large aren't that much better than options he already has in his main deck. The only exception to that is Mizium Mortars, because Corsair Crewfix is a specifically annoying card for him.
Quick update for you guys on another match. Tim Huckabee playing green-white aggro is up a game here over Peter Tragos playing the black-white mid-range deck. So Huckabee on the draw game one, able to get the job done.
Very, very important.
Yeah, that is big for him because if he loses game 2, he's on the play game 3, and that's exactly where green-white wants to be in that matchup. And we do have more results for you guys in other matchups. We will certainly let you guys know. Caleb Williams playing Red-White Burn against Brett Jenkins playing Jund Walkers. That's our 2 versus 7. And Dane Glossner, our 4 seed with Jund Walkers, playing against Mono Black Devotion in the hands of Benjamin Reed. That's our 4 versus 5. And we are just being told right now that Ben Reed did win game number 1 over Glossner. So Mono Black Devotion up a game over Jund Walkers.
Pretty big upset there,
Yep.
in my mind.
I think so too.
I've watched Jund Walkers against Mono Black Devotion several times now, and it seems like Mono Black Devotion lacks the necessary tools in the matchup.
Again, no islands in our top 8, so if you're a fan of blue mana, I guess you'll have to wait for the legacy portion where...
You'll get your fill.
Yeah,
Don't worry about it.
I promise there will be islands there. That is a guarantee. You know what? If there's not an island in the top 8, I'll do a cartwheel.
If there's not a basic island?
No, that's not what I said.
An island.
An island.
Okay.
I was very careful.
Yeah.
That means that volcanics and drops are eligible.
A basic island, that's not impossible for that to happen.
No.
You know, you just have a bunch of Delver decks and some non-blue decks, and there you go. But yeah, if we count the dual lands, then of course.
Of course, count the dual lands. I don't want to do another one, man. All right, I was very careful. And if there are like 7 Death and Taxes decks and like a burn deck, well, first of all, the burn deck's probably going to win the tournament. And come on, if that happens.
I think Legacy top 8 with no sources of blue mana in the elimination rounds
That's
is basically impossible.
Yeah, I think that's actually impossible.
Have you read Brainstorm?
Yeah.
Are you familiar with this card?
Graves and Eckert for game number 2. Wow, Joseph doesn't like his hand.
It's playing the format on easy mode.
Yeah, he's going to send it back. You can see his face. He did not like his opening hand at all. Graves is going to keep relatively quickly here. Again, Graves did win a Legacy Open earlier this year. Week 3 of Season 1 when we were in Columbus. Took it down with Reanimator. Beat Adam Franzi in the finals playing Show and Tell.
Reanimator is a curious deck in Legacy. Feels like
it's good gone.
It's got so many good matchups, so many dominant matchups. It's the combo deck that's the best against other combo decks. And there's other matchups like Elves and Infect where you go get something like Elisnor and they can never win the game.
Yeah.
But the prevalence of Deathrite Shaman means that a lot of its normal matchups are not even that solid game 1. And so it's off the radar even though it has plenty of dominant matchups.
It is a little bit surprising to see that deck at like an all-time low right now.
Yeah.
You don't see it. And I can't remember the last time we covered a match of Reanimator. Of just Entomb, get Gristlebrand, you lose. I haven't seen it in months.
It had a deep run, appeared in the elimination rounds in Detroit a couple months back, a show I did with Patrick Chapin. But by and large, very much off the grid at this point.
You know, Graveyard Hate is, you know, I can think you can safely say it's at a pretty low point right now. We had 2 Dredge decks top 8 in DC. You know, they didn't make it through the quarterfinals, unfortunately for those players, but you know, two dredge decks, making the top 8. It's pretty telling about where we're at in as far as graveyard removal and graveyard hate goes.
There's a lot of main deck Deathrite Shamans. That's bad for business. And then because Rest in Peace happens to be good against decks like Rug Delver, for example, it's not just an anti-graveyard deck measure. There's a lot of sideboards that have Rest in Peace in it, which is one of the most hateful anti-graveyard cards that those decks can play against. So I think the mixture of those 2 cards, how prevalent they are, is really bad for decks like Dredge.
Eckert will keep his 6. He'll start off with an Elvish Mystic going to 18 in the process. Graves will draw a card. It's a Mutavault. You have to imagine he has a 1-drop, and he does. It's a Fire Drinker Satyr. Also has that Dynacharge in hand.
Yeah, I was not a fan of the Dynacharge, given the way that Joseph's deck is set up post-board. We'll see if it plays a role here.
Firefish Striker is the draw. There is a Mountain. See if Graves wants to send in here with the Fire Drinker, offer up the trade. Or at least what looks like a trade on the surface.
So the upshot is you want to keep Joseph's mana production low because his deck's all about 4 and 5 mana spells. The flip side is that it's pretty dangerous to start trading and filling the graveyards up with creatures when you know he's sideboarding into Scavenging Ooze. So that's the decision Tommy has to make here.
He has a second emissary. See, I didn't catch that. So this is a good way to reload.
Sure, this is, I mean, you know, nothing wrong with this.
Yeah, that's not the worst turn. It's been a while since we've seen a Burning Tree emissary turn like that. Here's a Temple. Gonna leave that on top, kick the turn back. Graves will draw a card. It's another copy of Stoke the Flames.
Well, you had a good run.
Yeah. I was gonna say, would you be Dyna Charging here? Because I would be.
Yep.
It's a Dyna Charge with Overload. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. And all of a sudden, Mr. Joseph Eckert is at 6. We might not play many more turns of this game.
I don't think we're going to play any.
No.
Because he can't play a blocker.
Yep. Yeah, I think he's just going to pick it up. He knows that he's beat Firefish Striker will stop a blocker. The 2 Stoke the Flames are enough reach to get the job done, and Thomas Graves is still undefeated in this tournament. He's our #1 overall seed, and Rabble Red is moving on to the semifinals.
Pretty dominant performance there. Not a lot to be said.
Yeah, not really.
And Graves appears to be de-sideboarding. You can see that he did, in fact, bring in the Mortars, wanted some extra answers to Corsair Crufix. The Eidolons came in as well.
I do feel like this matchup is great for Graves, and honestly, I feel like this top 8 is great for Graves.
There's no Mono Blue Devotion. It's not a great matchup for Rabble Red. There's no, you know, really removal-heavy builds of, let's say, Esper, for example, which that's not necessarily a bad matchup, but it can be on the more challenging side.